Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the SAP community call today on SAP Intelligent RPA. You have maybe noticed that we have a lot of calls at the moment. And we have also SAP Intelligent RPA as topic of the month in the community. And yeah, we hope you will enjoy all the content we are sharing there, and we hope you stay tuned with us. And of course, I'm only the technical host for today. My name is Svea Becker. I'm from the SAP community team, but our expert today is Hanna Stellmach, and Hanna is our speaker for the API and Triggers and Notifiers call. And she works as a software developer in the SAP Intelligent RPA team in Walldorf. She has a bachelor degree in cognitive science from the University of Tübingen, but that's not all. She has another one in computer science, which she did also in Germany and Freiburg. And after she joined the SAP Intelligent RPA team last year, she has been involved in the implementation of API triggers and notifiers and SAP conversational AI, and contributed to the quality of the product, which is great. And welcome, Hanna. I'm really happy that you're here with me today. And also welcome to all others who joined. And another excuse that we are a 1 hour delay. We changed that at short notice last week, I think. We all thought that you have been notified about that. But now you're here, we are really happy, and I hand over to you, Hanna.
Yes, thanks, Svea. So I guess I will turn off my camera now for the presentation.
Good idea. I will do it too. Yeah. Enjoy.
All right. Yeah, so welcome everyone to the today's webinar about API triggers and notifiers. Okay, I guess this does not work for the PowerPoint. Sorry. Let's try again. Okay. So yeah, the agenda, first I will present the webinar content to you, and I will also do some hands-on session in between. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have time for some questions. Yeah, so in this webinar, I will give you an introduction about the API triggers and notifiers. So we will deploy a project, and then we will execute it by using an API trigger. And we will also confirm the bot execution status by using an API notifier. And in addition, I will also show you how you can access the SAP Intelligent RPA APIs from the outside. All right, so let's get started. So API triggers allow you to start a bot execution automatically on an event that occurs outside Intelligent RPA via web call. And of course, when you started such an bot execution automatically, you will also want to know about the status of the bot execution. So you can want to know when the bot has started, when it has been successful, if it has failed, or if it has been canceled. And this is the job of the notifiers. So they are the complementing part of the API triggers. And they are responsible for communicating the execution status to the outside world. And API notifiers in particular, they will do that by using a web call. So a typical use case of API triggers and notifiers is the integration of SAP Intelligent RPA with other systems or products. And API triggers allow you to start a bot execution from your application, while API notifiers allow you to receive updates on the bot execution status in your own application. All right, so now I would like to show you how you can create an API trigger and an API notifier. For that, I will first show you quickly the project that I will use for this demo purpose. So this project is, it is a demo project, and we will give some customer data as input into the scenario, and as output, we want to get some credit score validation of that customer. And as you can see here, for example, in the properties, we defined the input, so we have to pass it a customer object, and in the output, we get the credit validation. So now let's go to the factory. Under the Projects tab, you can see that I already have created a project. I called it My Credit Score, and we can quickly have a look at it here. So I imported the project as a desktop package, and I already made the scenario MCS, which stands for My Credit Score, usable as a skill. So I can close that. And let's go to packages. So I already deployed a package out of that project. And now under the packages tab, we can add a trigger for that package. So let's click here. So first I have to select an environment. So of course I want to run it in my environment. So I choose Hanna's environment here. Click on next. And now I can choose the trigger type which I want to use. And for this purpose, I want to use, of course, an API trigger. Click on next. Okay, so now I can give it a name. I will just call it API trigger, really simple. The description, so it starts MCS. Here on execute, I can choose the scenario or the process which the API trigger should start. In this case, there's only one scenario available, so I can only choose that one. And I will leave the priority as low in this case. And now I can click on create. And here I can see all the information of that API trigger. So first of all, when I want to execute that API trigger, I need to perform a post request. The URL is the endpoint which has been generated by that API trigger, which I should call when I want to execute the API trigger. This is the IRPA trigger token, and this secures that endpoint which is generated by the API trigger. And we have to provide that either in the header of our request, or I can also provide it in the body of the request. And here you can see an example payload, which I will pass then in my request when executing the API trigger. So here you can see the invocation context. So the invocation context is basically just a custom JSON object, which I can define by myself. And you can use it for core correlation, for example, or to pass some transactional data. And below you can see that we have input here, and the input is always defined by the input schema of the scenario that we would like to execute. So as I have shown you in the Desktop Studio, you saw that the input needs a customer object, and here you can see how it is defined. So we have house number, last name, and so on. And if we click on input schema, we can see the input schema more detailed. So we have the schema customer, which has several properties here, like house number, which is of type string, last name, which is also of type string, and so on. Okay, so I will copy that information because I need it later, and I will just paste it here. I can use it later. All right, so now we have created an API trigger, and now we can create also an API notifier. So an API notifier is always attached to an API trigger. So if I click here on the more options, I can select add notifier, and I want to add an API notifier. So notifiers can notify on different events. They are available here. So you can either notify on start, success, failure, or cancel. And depending on which event you choose, there are different variables available, which you can use then in the payload. So if we have a look at a start notifier, you can see that the available variables is only the invocation context, which is the custom object, which you can pass, but you don't have to pass it in the payload of the API trigger. Same as for the failure notifier. Oh, sorry, same for the cancel notifier. So there's also only the invocation context variable available. And if we have a look at the failure notifier now, you can see that there's one more variable available. It's the error variable, and this just contains some more detailed information about the error that occurred. And now the last one on success. You can see that we also have the output variable available, and this refers to the output of the scenario. So for the demo, I will use a success notifier. I will call it success API notifier. Say it confirms MCS. execution. So now I have the callback URL. So this is basically the URL of the application which you would like to notify. So for demo purpose, I will just use a simple app that logs its incoming requests. And I have the link ready here. So the notifier should perform a post request. But if you want to do it differently, you can choose between get, post, put, or delete. But in this case, I want to use post. And you can also set an authorization. So in some cases, you would need authorization for your application. So you can choose between none, basic, or auth 2. But in this case, I don't need any authorization. And you could also add some headers. So you define the key and the value here. But also in this case, I don't need any headers. So I will remove that. So here I can define the payload of the notifier. So for the demo, I want to send the score of the credit validation to my app. So I will call it score. And here I can use the output variable. I want to have the credit validation object, then the credit score, and then the value. And also I want to pass some transactional data. So I want to have the customer ID. And I know that this customer ID will be present in the invocation context. So I will use the invocation context variable now. Dot customer ID. All right, so now our API notifier is ready and I can click on create. So now you have seen how you can create an API trigger, and attached to an API trigger, you can create an API notifier. You can also add more notifiers here. So I could choose another notifier. So for example, I could also notify now on failure or start or whatever I would like to have in that case. All right, so yeah, before actually showing you how you can execute an API trigger, it's important to mention that when you want to access SAP Intelligent RPAs from the outside, so from your own application, you need a service key from the service instance for authorization. And this can be created in the SAP Cloud Platform Cockpit by using the SAP Intelligent Robotic Process Automation Service. And the service key contains the client ID, the client secret, and the access token URL. And you need all this information to get the OAuth token. And now I would like to show you in the SAP Cloud Platform Cockpit how you can create those service key information. So I'm here in the SAP Cloud Platform Cockpit. In my sub-account, I enabled Cloud Foundry, and then I go to Spaces and create a new space. I will call it Service Broker. Click on Create. Then I select the newly created space, go to Service Marketplace. And now I have to choose the Intelligent Robotic Process Automation Service. And as you can see here in the description, it enables the access to the Intelligent Robotic Process Automation APIs. So I choose that service, go to Instances, and create a new instance. So I can just click on Next here as well, Next, Next. Now I have to give it a name called IRPA, and then I can click on Finish. So now I select that new instance, go to Service Keys, and now I can create a new service key. So I will name it Service Key, click on Save. So here you can see, yeah, quite a lot of information, but actually what you will need is the client ID, the client secret, and the URL. All right, so now I just showed you how you can get the service key information. But before, before actually executing the complete workflow end to end, I would just like to show you the data flow between the API triggers and the notifiers. Yeah, so here you can see a diagram. And the starting point would always be a system, application, or a user that starts an API trigger. And when starting an API trigger, you can provide some input. This is always depending on the scenario which you would like to execute. So when the scenario needs an input, you also need to define the input in the API trigger. So basically the input that you provide to the API trigger is predefined by the execution scenario. When executing an API trigger, you can also pass some invocation context as already mentioned. So this is just a JSON object, which you can define by yourself basically, and you can use it for call correlation or transactional data, and it is not used by the bot itself. It is directly passed to the notifier. And as you can see here, the notifier then has the information of the invocation context and also of the output of the bot execution scenario. And it then can consolidate the information and send it to an external system when it is an API notifier. Or you can also integrate it with SAP Conversational AI, then you would use CAI notifier. But in this demo, it's about the API notifiers, so we will concentrate on that part here. Okay, so now we are ready to run it end to end. And for that, I will use Postman for executing the API trigger. So let's go to Postman. So I will add a new request here. I will call it run trigger. So let's have a look at our API trigger again to see the information that we need. So I can click here on edit. Okay, so first of all, we have to perform a post method. So let's change that to post. Then we need the URL of the API trigger. So I copied that one and paste it here. The next thing is the IRPA trigger token. So as you can see, this one is hidden now, but that's not a problem because I copied all the information beforehand. So I can copy that here. Or you could also, you can also click on generate a new token in here. So I will go to headers and add IRPA trigger token as key and here the value. And in the body, I will pass the invocation context and the input. So I will go to raw and use JSON format. And I already prepared the input, which I would like to send. So in the invocation context, I will send the customer ID. So as I have shown you, when creating the API notifier, I'm expecting the customer ID in the invocation context. So this field will basically be used by the notifier then. And here in the input, you can see that I defined all the fields for my customer. So I want to get the credit score of Sarah Walker. And here you can see house number, last name, and so on. So before actually sending the request, we still need to do our authorization. So I go to authorization, choose OAuth 2, and click on Get New Access Token. And now I just copy the information from the service key. So we'll go here. So I have to choose the client ID, paste it here. I have to use the client secret. and also the access token URL. And here it is important that you add OAuth/token at the end. Otherwise, it won't work. So now I have to request a token, and then I click on Use Token. So now we should have everything in place to actually run our trigger, but beforehand, we need to make sure that our agent is also ready. So let's go back to the factory. And under the Agents tab, I can see that I have my agent, which is in status ready. And for the API triggers, it is also important that the agent is in unattended mode. All right, so this should be fine. So now I can click on Send and actually execute the API trigger. So as a response, I get the run UID. And if we take a look at the jobs, now you can see that the bot has already started. So it's going through the different steps. And now it is already done. So as you can see, when the scenario is finished, we have a credit scoring report. And yeah, this is basically the value which I was interested in for the demo. So we have a credit score value of 84 in that case. So if we go back to the factory now and refresh the jobs, you can see that our job has been successful. And if we click on the job, we can also see some more details. So about the machine and the trigger, also the different, the status history. And what is important to mention here, we can also have a look at our notifier instances. So we can see that we have a success API notifier, and this notifier is in status successful. And now we can also have a look at the app that should have logged this request from the API notifier. So we'll go to my simple app and retrieve all the requests. And as I can see here, I have one request that was incoming. And here in the body, this is the interesting part, I can see that the score is 84, which is basically the output of the bot execution scenario. And I also have the customer ID available here, which I was passing in the invocation context. All right. So that was basically the demo, and now we have time for some questions.
This is perfect, and it looked very easy and clear. Thank you. We have also already a question. The question has been submitted by an anonymous attendee. Can we create API notifier also for attended or scheduled bots?
So you can, let's have a look at the factory. So if I go to my packages, we can see that I can create a new, for example, scheduled one. Click on next. We'll just choose one time slot here. And then we can see that we also can add notifiers for scheduled triggers. So you can choose between API and CAI as well. I'm actually not quite sure for the attended triggers, but we can just try right now. Let's choose an attended one. Click on create. And let's see. Yeah, so for the attended notifiers, it's not possible because, I mean, the attended triggers are supposed to be started by a human. So you would suggest that there is one person sitting behind it and watching the job.
Okay. Yeah, this is not even possible. Thanks for the question. So if there are more questions, you can just write it here, and we have another one. I would like to trigger the API from SuccessFactors. Are there any functionalities available?
Yeah, this is a question that I cannot answer, I'm sorry, but I mean, I can discuss and ask my colleagues whether this is possible, and then in the blog post, which will be coming soon, yeah, talk more about that question.
Yeah, this is a perfect idea.
Yeah.
We will monitor the questions you are writing here in the Q&A section, and Hanna will include them in her blog post following the call, so that you can wrap it up with it afterwards. And this is also a perfect time to add your community profile here in the chat. I will do that. So you can follow Hanna in the SAP community, and then you are getting notified when she's publishing her blog post. You can also ask the question live if you want to. You can just hover over your name and raise your hand, and I can unmute you so that you can speak up, or you can write it in the chat. But as mentioned, when we have it here in the Q&A, we will definitely include it in the blog post. And if there are no more questions, then I can only say thank you very much for the presentation. It was great having you. And we will publish the recording as soon as possible on our community calls page. And everyone, wish you a great day. And when I talk more, then we have another question. That was my intention, so we have one. Do I need to update to the latest version to access this?
Which version, like the version of Intelligent RPA?
I would assume that, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, in this demo, I was using 2004, but the API triggers and notifiers are available at least since 1912. So you don't need the latest version to use them.
Ah, perfect. All right, yes, I hope this answers a question then. And we have another one. Do we have another session on CAI notifiers? So at the moment, I think there's nothing planned, but we are scheduling a lot of sessions at the moment. So therefore, I would suggest that you check out our community calls page, which I will post here in the chat as well. If this is a topic which you can cover, Hanna, we can just schedule
Yeah,
call
we can.
on that.
Yeah, there's also a blog post, I guess, about it, or at least there is a video, which I think is pretty good. So it is worth to have a look at it. It should be also in the community.
Yeah, of course, we have the SAP Intelligent RPA topic page. And maybe there you can find that information here. There are a lot of interviews and webinars as well. So let me, topic page, give you also the link here. And another question, what to use in invoice context if no JSON object needs to be passed?
So in the invocation context, if you don't want to use it, you can just leave it empty. So for example, when we have a look at the body of the request here, it would be also valid if I just send a request like this. So it's completely optional, the invocation context. You just need to be careful if your API notifier is expecting some object in the invocation context.
Okay. And we have Priya. She wants to ask a question. Priya, you should be unmuted.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Perfect.
Yeah. After the API, we have added the API notifier, right? So you have got the credit score as 84. So in which link was that value consumed? You had shown one link where the value was consumed, right? So it has reached the external system where the value has to be consumed, is it?
So basically we retrieved the value via the output variable. So as you can see, when I added the notifier, I defined a score here as output.creditvalidation.creditscore.value. And this variable here refers to the variable here in the desktop studio to this object here. And this value is set during the scenario. So then in the API notifier, I can retrieve all the information in the output variable. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, it answered my
Okay.
question. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And you see, that was a great example that you can also ask your question live, not writing it down. Yeah, and I think there are no more questions. So thanks again, Hanna, for being part of the SAP community calls, and stay tuned, everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.